elections have consequences, and these consequences have affected me, and it's affecting all of us one way or the other. Welcome to Shades of Us. I am Ramat. Today I'm going to be talking about why elections have consequences. I want to start by saying that I had my political awakening in 2011. That was the first time I began to care about national development, politics, and how they affected us. And I was so excited that I wanted to get a card and vote because I'd never voted before. To be honest, we were forced to go and vote, but to go and get the card anyway. But I was excited to get my card. So I went to this village, obscure village in Zaria in Kaduna State, and I was trying to find where we could, register and do whatnot. So by the time I was ready to now leave school, I couldn't get my card. I was just like, okay, let's just let it go. And when elections came, it was like, I couldn't get my card, so I couldn't vote. So I told myself that in 2015 that I would definitely vote because Nigeria runs a 4-year cycle. So I said, I was definitely going to vote. I would get my card and whatnot. Then I moved to Adamawa State. And then before the elections, once they opened voters registration, I went, to the INEC office, INEC being our Independent National Electoral Commission. And I went there and I said, you know what, I want my card and whatnot. And they said, okay, they're trying to transfer it and this and that. They're going to get my card for me. And then I kept going. And after a while, it was like few days to the elections. And I knew I just didn't have the energy or the time. So I didn't go anymore and I didn't get my card. Turns out the card wasn't even ready. So it was ready 2 years later when I had left Adamawa State, and I was sent a message that, my card was in Adamawa State. But I said, okay, now I was living in a new town, Abuja, and I was going to definitely vote in 2019. I wanted to vote. I was so excited. I was like, I want to vote because 2011, I didn't vote, and then there was some violence and some election drama, and I hated that. And I had to live with the consequences of having the leader that was chosen. So at that point, I liked the leader, and I was like, you know what? But still, I want to vote. I want to be able to contribute, right? And so when 2019 finally came, I was like, good, I'm going to get my card. I'm definitely going to be there. So I started going to the INEC office to get my card months before they even opened the voters registration. So I would go and they'll tell me, oh no, we can't do this. You have to go and come back. Voters registration is not open. You have to go to INEC headquarters. And I'll drive to the headquarters and say, oh no, you can't go here. You have to go to where you registered. That's where you'll get it. And I'll do all of that. And they kept saying, oh, your card wasn't ready, this and that. And I was like, okay, you know what? Let me just let it slide. And then it was close to the elections and the voters registration proper was open. I had to take time out because there was a deadline and everybody wanted to get their cards. And so it was maybe 3 days or 4 days to the close of this thing. And I just looked at it. Going wasn't helping me. I needed to spend a whole lot of time there. Then I took like 3 days out of the office and I went to the INEC office. Goodness gracious, it was the worst experience. I was on the longest queue, packed bodies, each of us trying to get our cards, and it was so messy. At a point, I even got elbowed in the face because of how they were struggling to get the cards. And, there are pictures that you can see with my feet really bad. In fact, I wore the wrong shoe, so I had problems with my back from standing so long, from standing basically barefoot because my shoe was just the worst. And from struggling with people and things like that, and it was just the worst. Finally, I got to the front. After the third day of doing this from 6 a.m., getting there, before 6 a.m., and then leaving at past 5, and then I got to the front, only for them to say, oh, no, your card isn't ready. What? I was pissed off beyond words. Like, you could see my face was such a frown. I was like, what? I couldn't have gone through all this stress, and then you still tell me my card was not ready. So I couldn't vote for the 2019 election. Oof, I was sad and I was, really disappointed. But I promised myself that no matter what happens, 2023, I am going to vote. So when INEC decided to, do an online thing where we could register and do everything, I was one of the first people to go there. put in my details, and then I registered to vote. Now I needed to transfer my card, and I'm having some problems with it, which means I still have to go to the INEC office. This time, I'm not worried. 2023 is still 2 years away. I will go to the INEC office as often as I can to make sure that I do get my card, because elections have consequences, and these consequences have affected me, and it's affecting all of us one way or the other. So I'm going to look at 4 major categories or 4 major areas that election consequences are affecting us. The first one is social consequence, and let's look at health first. We've had doctors go on strike because they haven't received salaries. We've had, hospitals that are not fully equipped with the regular things. I'm not talking about, X-ray machines or things like that. No, I'm talking about the basic things, consumables, cotton wood, syringes and things like that, plasters. There are hospitals that don't have these things, and you have doctors who are performing surgeries with their phone lights. It is such a horrible system, and it affects all of us. Like, there isn't a proper insurance. Yes, I know there are things that are being done to try and help people with this, but it isn't even proper. It is just being done. Right? There are areas that I know that the government has done well in terms of health, but there are also areas that, no. Right? Another way that, another social issue that is really big for me is education. Like, we had months where teachers went on strike because they didn't get their salaries. And if a teacher doesn't get salary, how are they going to impact in the lives of the people they are teaching? And that's just for maybe primary and secondary schools. In the universities, the academic staff unions or the staff, non-academic staff unions were on strike for the longest time. Now, I am trying to make this post as neutral as possible without any political leaning, but it is terrible. It is really terrible, because it's a persistent thing that has happened with whoever has been in government. People refuse to listen to the demands of the academic or non-academic staff, and then students are the ones who pay for it. There are students who have 2 years added to their education because of strikes, things that should not matter, things that should not happen. Right? So if you vote in people who care about health and education, we would not have situations where teachers or doctors or essential personalities like this are going on strike, so much so that they affect the rest of us. I'm going to calm down a bit and talk about the third aspect of a social issue. And I'm calling these social issues because they affect our social lives. And this is insecurity. And I'm going to go back to 2014, where we had the very first instance of a really grand kind of insecurity in Nigeria, and I think it birthed a lot of other things. And that was when Boko Haram began to attack communities and abduct girls first, and then go to Buniyadi and mass murder some young boys. It was just the worst kind of thing. But that act has spiraled into so many other aspects. Now we are dealing with Boko Haram. We are dealing with factions of Boko Haram. We are dealing with bandits, unknown gunmen, kidnappers, with the MO of complete terrorists, people who are bringing down planes, people who are going to communities and taking people and then, not being held accountable, not being chased after. What is happening? Again, who you vote affects your security. It's not that hard to see. If our government cared about our security, and I'm not just talking about, the present day government or the world, I'm starting from as far back as 2011, because that's when I got my political awakening. We've had governments that just do not care about us. Things have become progressively worse. Right? And then, okay, we have all of these things happening, and I can't help but remember a time when I used to leave Zaria in Kaduna State, which is just 45 minutes away from the city center. I'll leave at 7:30 p.m. and then I will get to my house, and my father would just be like, "Why are you coming home late?" That was his only worry. Now I can't even go to Zaria because you're scared that you might be kidnapped, or you can't even go to Abuja because you're scared. From Abuja to Zaria is a death trap. And it's not just within the northern Nigeria, it's also in the southern Nigeria, from Oyo to Lagos. It's such a death trap. In the southeast, Imo, Anambra State, if you go to the south, nowhere in Nigeria is safe. On multiple levels, we're dealing with insecurity. And it is like, can this even stop? Can this ever stop? We are watching our nation deteriorate because we do not have a government that understands that every Nigerian life matters. And so they must protect us. So election consequences are real. The second major election, major area that election has consequences on are on economic issues. The World Population Clock shows that Nigeria is the poverty capital of the world. Poverty capital. And then we have a bulk of our population that is young people and bulk of our population that's uneducated and unemployed. And so what happens is that people who are unemployed are open to vices. And yes, people will say don't infantilize people. But again, it is easier for someone who hasn't eaten for 2 days to lose his values than you who has eaten just this morning. Right? So it is very, very important that we vote people who care about us. And we can see it in our unemployment statistics. The Nigerian Bureau of Statistics has shown us consistently how we are failing our people as a nation. And then let's talk about wages. Oh my goodness. Whew. So there was this time when the government decided that they were going to increase the wages to a certain amount of money. I wouldn't mention because, again, I'm trying to be as neutral as possible. And then some governors were excited and jumping on it, and they quickly decided they were going to take the minimum wage to that particular figure without giving a game plan for how they were going to raise revenue to meet up with an already over-bloated civil service. And so they decided to pay. 2 years down the line, they were not paying salaries, and then they had to cut down the minimum wage to what it was before. And it was like, why was this done? Because we don't have people who care about us, who understand that economic policies are not just, blatant proclamations and that's all. That there is a lot of planning that goes with economic policies, and it's the only way that we can move forward. But we don't have people who think along those lines. We have people who are partisan, who are very, very bigoted. We have people who do not just care about the average Nigerian. That when you vote leaders, there is a direct consequence on you. Whatever happens to you, there is a direct consequence. The Naira is in the pits as a result of the kind of government we have.